You have the right to remain silent, but we'd prefer if you didn't.
Spinning the law, spinning the law.
This is Malzberg's
Spinning the law,
Spinning the Law
spinning the law, spinning the law.
with attorney Kendell Coffey.
I can just sit back and listen to that music all day long. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. It's Thursday. It's the middle of the show, and that means traditionally it's time for Spinning the Law with Kendell Coffey. Hello, Kendell. How are you, sir?
Good, Steve. How are you today?
I am good. We have so many interesting stories to talk about. The first one, very horrific. The 24-year-old Massachusetts high school math teacher, Ritzer, I should say, who was apparently, police say they have a confession from the 14-year-old suspect, Philip Chisholm, who's being held without bail. They say they'll try him as an adult. He allegedly followed her into the bathroom, pulled out a box cutter, slit her throat, put her body in a bin, and dragged it outside and dumped the body in the woods, and then went to the movies in another town. So the focal point seems to be a little beyond the murder itself, that, hey, here's a 14-year-old kid. Why is he being charged as an adult? I mean, I think he should be, but you tell us why he is.
Well, the perspective of the law shifts quite a bit over the last 30 years. It's not just about the so-called alleged offender, but the victims. And for this 24-year-old teacher, who apparently was absolutely loved, appreciated, respected, there's no difference in a brutal murder whether it's a, quote, child or it's an adult. That's part of perspective. But the other thing is just recognition that young offenders commit terrible crimes and seem capable of making the choices. Over the years, it used to be that the average killers were in their 20s. Now, a lot of alleged killers are in their teens. So the system, to really deal with that kind of threat, needs to recognize that someone who is able to carry out a brutal, premeditated plan like this has the capabilities, sufficient capabilities, to be accountable as an adult.
Yeah. Does it play into it at all that this seems to be, I mean, it could have been spur of the moment, but it appears to be well thought out. I mean, it was after school. It was he followed her in. He had the murder weapon. He disposed of the body. I mean, it seems that I don't know if it was premeditated or not. But does that play into the decision, or in fact, is that the law in Massachusetts that if you're 14 or over that you're charged as an adult, or could be?
No, I mean, ultimately, that it's a matter that's reviewed by prosecutors. They could have charged and prosecuted somebody through the juvenile system. There is an abetors. They could have charged and prosecuted somebody through the juvenile system. There is an aberrant can be a murder. Now, the Supreme Court has said that, of course, anyone who commits the crime of murder under 18 isn't subject to the death penalty. We recall that law. There is some recognition of the differences. But kids mature fast, and sometimes they mature fast. Recognition of the differences. But kids mature fast, and sometimes they mature fast.
For the 14-year-old, and they held a moment of silence for the teacher at Fenway Park in Boston yesterday, prior to the first pitch of Game 1 of the World Series. Terrible, terrible story. And then, as I'm driving home yesterday, beep, 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 here comes breaking news, especially in this area where I am in the New York area, of Michael Skakel, the Kennedy cousin, granted a new trial. He spent more than a decade in prison for the 1975 murder of Martha Moxley. They were both teenagers at the time. His attorneys could, as we speak, be looking to get him released pending the new trial. He's the nephew of Robert and Ethel Kennedy. 11 years of a 20-to-life sentence for the killing of Martha Moxley in Greenwich, Connecticut. They were both just 15 years old. Are you surprised by this? Because he's been trying to do this for a long time, and he's gotten nowhere.
Well, I'm not surprised that ineffective assistance of counsel comes up, because when someone's a defendant, especially in such a serious crime as murder, you know, the initial trial, they try to put the police and the police witnesses on trial. And then in the next phase in the appeal, the defendant's trying to put the judge and jury on trial and say they got it all wrong. Then, if none of that works, many times the defendant turns and tries to put his own attorney on trial and say it's ineffective assistance of counsel. We recall O.J. doing very much the same thing not long, within the last few months over in Las Vegas, saying it was all the bad advice and the bad handling he got from his attorney after he lost a trial and lost the regular appeals. What's striking about this is the judge wrote an over 120-page opinion detailing, rejecting some issues, coming down solidly on some concerns and others. So this was an extraordinary case in every respect, a murder conviction 25 years after the crime, and yet this judge put a lot of thought into it. And honestly, Steve, there are some very, very serious issues in this opinion that made me think that, there really are some concerns about whether there was effective assistance of counsel in this trial. Amazing as it seems, how does somebody who's wealthy not have the best lawyer? His lawyer certainly had a great reputation. But when you go through this judge's order, you have some real concerns about what happened during the trial.
All right, but now, does this, not does this open the door, but does this mean that the door is open for, what about the guy who, doesn't have this kind of money but was, convicted of a crime, maybe murder, maybe rape, whatever, and had a public defender? Not that I'm, bashing public defenders, but, can any defendant who's convicted claim that they had, I don't know, is there a responsibility on the part of Mickey Sherman at the time, the high-profile defense attorney that you're talking about? If he made mistakes, if he didn't do a good job, is that's grounds for a new trial, or don't there have to be technical legal things that he did wrong or didn't provide? Could it be as simple as he didn't bring in something to evidence that maybe he should have? Is that enough to give a new trial?
Generally not. And just as you say, you don't want to encourage the floodgates. By the way, there are gazillions of these motions and requests all the time. New trial, my lawyer did a terrible job. People sit in prisons, not a lot of other things to do. They talk to other inmates who have looked at the law a little bit. And I'm telling you, these motions pour in to both state and federal prosecution offices. This judge, however, really went through a lot of specifics that were not little things, not even medium-sized things, but in the view of a judge, dramatic things that could have made the difference. Nobody wants to look at a victim's family and say, after everything you've been through, I'm now going to put you through it again, and there's going to have to be a new trial. No judge would want to do that lightly, and I think this judge gave it a lot of attention. Now, the prosecution has the right to appeal this. They're going to appeal it. So it's far from clear that Skakel is going to get a new trial. But whatever comes out of this case, when you read that opinion, you've really got to be concerned about the job that was done by trial counsel.
Now, one more as far as a new trial. They'll appeal it, but if it came to a new trial, you got witnesses who are dead. There was even a dead witness during the actual trial itself. He spoke from the grave in pre-trial testimony, I guess. So you got people who are dead. You got memory that is probably not as sharp for those who are still alive and involved as the memory once was. So, is it even possible for a prosecution to launch to re-prosecute this case if they lose their appeals and actually get a conviction based on what I just said?
It's going to be very tough. It was a very difficult case to successfully prosecute, back when they got the conviction in 2002. It just becomes that much more difficult now. Time is almost always on the defendant's side, and it never makes whether it's a personal injury case or something as serious as prosecution for murder, it's always more difficult to prove your case after years and years have passed.
We're talking to Kendell Coffey here as we go spinning the law on the Steve Malzberg Show. A federal judge on Tuesday said, okay, we could have this lawsuit that challenges Obamacare's insurance subsidies. It focuses on whether the law allows for subsidies in all states or only in states that have set up exchanges. So the federal government had been trying to get this thrown out and not allow it to go forward. The judge, District of Columbia judge, said it could go forward, but then refused to stay the subsidies until pending the outcome of the trial. So it was a victory for the plaintiff, but not a total victory.
Yeah, I would describe it as much more of a victory than not for the plaintiff. There's a glitch in the law, a huge glitch, because it provided for these subsidies, which many believe are essential for Obamacare to go forward. Subsidies to the individuals participating. The subsidies, according to to go forward. Subsidies to the individuals participating. The subsidies, according to state. So 36 states decide not to establish exchanges. What does the federal government do about that? They then provide the tax credits for those who participate essentially through the federally created exchange. The law doesn't specifically authorize that, so you got a gap. The administration has said we have the right to fill gaps when Congress didn't speak to it. A lot of judges don't agree with that. They say, we read the statute that Congress enacted. That's what we judges have to apply. So I think this is a real concern. Procedurally, Steve, where I think it might go very quickly is to the appeals court, because when an injunction is denied, that gives the party who doesn't get their injunction a right to an immediate appeal. So I think we can. This could very well go to the appeals court on the injunction issue, and you may get a decision from the appeals court even before the district judge makes a final decision on the merits of the case.
Very interesting. You think there's a case there. One more for you, and this is this crazy. A coach of a Texas high school football team has been accused of bullying. And we talked about bullying in another context last week, the Florida case and parents' responsibility and all that. But this is a formal complaint was issued after this coach's team beat another school 91-0. The father of a player on the losing team, Western Hills High School football team, claims that Aledo High School football team coach Tim Buchanan encouraged his players to bully their opponents by running up the score. I mean, this is really taking this bullying law to a new extreme, is it not?
Yeah, and bullying can be a serious thing. I mean, we've seen a number of teen suicides that seem to result from real bullying. I mean, to trivialize a very, very lopsided score and characterize it as bullying when we know what a serious thing bullying can be is just, taking the law to completely the wrong place. And I'm a Gator, and so our football team, when Steve Spurrier was there, ran up the score every time we could. Right. So was Steve Spurrier a bully? Who knows? But that's a very big misplacement of a concept and a form of conduct, bullying, which can have serious consequences.
So this complaint, if it goes to a court, I guess if you were the judge, you would just throw it right out, correct?
I wouldn't get to. I talked about football, so let's talk about baseball. And I wouldn't get to first base with me.
Plus, the coach says he was telling his players, take a knee. He brought in his second string. So I don't know what the heck the father of the other team is complaining about. And going into that kind of game, you probably knew you were going to get blown out anyway. But that is.
If I can win a court case big time, let them call it bullying. I just assume win as big as I can.
There you go. Hey, Kendell, thanks for making the time for us. Always a pleasure, sir.
Okay, Steve. Great talking to you.
Take care. You too. Kendell Coffey, ladies and gentlemen, spinning the law. Of course, the great attorney Kendell Coffey, and has a book by the same name. I say this every week. He's not on to plug the book. It's several years old, but it's a great, great read, highlighting many of the cases he's been involved in. We're talking Elian Gonzalez. We're talking about Bush v. Gore, or Gore v. Bush, I forget, and other high-profile cases. So very, very interesting reading. But this is insane. Is this not insane? The father of all right, 91-0 is in a football game. That is pretty lopsided. I mean, you can't get much more lopsided than that. I don't know that I've ever heard of anything like 91-0. Though I don't follow high school football that closely. Nonetheless, for a father, like Kendell said, to trivialize the bullying laws, or maybe, in my view, since I have a problem with some of the bullying laws, I think this just points out how bizarre they are. If this actually falls under, but if this gets anywhere at all under a bullying claim, then we got big problems in that regard. But we got big problems in everything. Just pick a story, any story. Pick an aspect of our life in this country, any aspect of our life in this country. Pick the Air Force Academy. Pick what Obama's doing to the Marines. I'll tell you what he's doing to the Marines. He wants to give them what they're calling girly hats. Well, he calls them the Marine Corps or corpsmen. So give them girly hats, too. Why not? We'll talk about this more. You want to weigh in on this, the Skakel case, the 14-year-old in Massachusetts being tried as an adult? You want to weigh in on the bullying accusation and the football team? You want to weigh in on anything we're talking about? I'd love to hear from you. 877-Newsmax is the number. The number changed, but it gets you to me. 877-Newsmax, which is 877-639-7629. On the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.